Nevertheless, the dimness shall not be such as was in her vexation, when at the first he lightly afflicted the land of Zebulun and the land of Naphtali, and afterward did more grievously afflict her by the way of the sea beyond Jordan, in Galilee of the nations.
Hello, good morning. Welcome to Line by Line Bible Studies. We're continuing today in the book of Genesis, chapter 49, as Jacob blesses, quote unquote, his sons. In some ways, I don't see him as cursing them in any ways. He's blessing them all. But some of that blessing, you could say, is in the form of rebuke. And sometimes the best thing you can do for someone to bless them is rebuke them. That is true. But all too often people use, I'm rebuking someone, I'm practicing tough love as an excuse to hide their malice, contempt, and cruelty, which is not tough love. It's something entirely different. But never let someone disguise their cruelty as tough love to you, in order to oppress you, which is what happens. Abusive people will use they'll use ideas they do not fully understand as a cover for their sin. But Jacob's tough love, I think, is genuine. Reuben, what are you going to say, buddy? Right? All right, so let's read. Let's do the whole chapter because it's one of those ones where we want the context. And it's enjoyable. And Jacob called unto his sons and said, Gather yourselves together, that I may tell you that which shall befall you in the last days. Gather yourselves together, and hear, ye sons of Jacob, and hearken unto Israel your father. Reuben, thou art my firstborn, my might, and the beginning of my strength, the excellency of dignity, and the excellency of power. Unstable as water, thou shalt not excel, because thou wentest up to thy father's bed. Then defilest thou it. He went up to my couch. Simeon and Levi are brethren. Instruments of cruelty are in their habitations. O my soul, come not thou into their secret, unto their assembly. Mine honor, be not thou united. For in... I realize I read that kind of wrong. O my soul, come not thou into their secret. Unto their assembly mine honor, be not thou united. Or be not thou united. It should be, O my soul, come not into their secret. O mine honor, be not united unto their assembly, if you were going to maintain the form. Sorry, I'm just getting annoyed at the King James there. Because they could have just kept it, O my soul, come not thou. O my honor, or just my honor. My soul, don't come to their secret place. My honor, do not come to their assembly. I don't know. I probably should have spent more time on the idea of secret. Gee. Well, secret councils. Yeah, I think we did. All right, sorry. For in their anger they slew a man, and in their self-will they digged down a wall. Cursed be their anger, for it was fierce, and their wrath, for it was cruel. I will divide them in Jacob and scatter them in Israel. Judah, thou art he whom thy brethren shall praise. Thy hand shall be on the neck of thine enemies. Thy father's children shall bow down before thee. Judah is a lion's whelp. From the prey, my son, thou art gone up. He stooped down. He couched as a lion, as an old lion. Who shall rouse him up? The scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor a lawgiver from between his feet, until Shiloh come. Unto him shall the gathering of the people be. Binding his foal unto the vine, and his ass's colt to the choice vine. His eyes shall be red with wine, and his teeth white with milk. Zebulun shall dwell at the haven of the sea, and he shall be for an haven of ships, and his border shall be unto Zidon. Issachar is a strong ass couching down between two burdens. And he saw that rest was good, and that the land it was pleasant, and the land that it was pleasant, and bowed his shoulder to bear, and became a servant unto tribute. Dan shall judge his people, as one of the tribes of Israel. Dan shall be a serpent by the way, an adder in the path, that biteth the horse's heels, so that his rider shall fall backward. I have waited for thy salvation, O Lord. Gad, a troop shall overcome him, but he shall overcome at last. Out of Asher his bread shall be fat, and he shall yield royal dainties. Naphtali is a hind let loose. He giveth goodly words. Joseph is a fruitful bough, even a fruitful bough by a well, whose branches runneth over a wall. The archers have sorely grieved him, and shot at him, and hated him. But his bow abode in strength, and the arms of his hands were made strong by the hands of the mighty God of Jacob. From thence is the shepherd, the stone of Israel. Even by God of thy father, who shall help thee, and by the Almighty, who shall bless thee with blessings of heaven above, blessings of the deep that lieth under, blessings of the breasts and of the womb. The blessings of thy father have prevailed above the blessings of my progenitors unto the utmost bound of the everlasting hills. They shall be on the head of Joseph, and on the crown of the head of him that was separate from his brethren. Benjamin shall raven as a wolf. In the morning he shall devour the prey, and at night he shall divide the spoil. All these are the 12 tribes of Israel, and this is that their father spake unto them, and blessed them, every one according to his blessing. He blessed them, and he charged them, and he said unto them, I am to be gathered to my people. Bury me with my fathers in the cave that is in the field of Ephron the Hittite, and the cave that is in the field of Machpelah, which is before Mamre, in the land of Canaan, which Abraham bought with the field of Ephron the Hittite for a possession of a burying place. There they buried Abraham and Sarah his wife. There they buried Isaac and Rebekah his wife. And there I buried Leah. The purchase of the field and of the cave that is therein was from the children of Heth. And when Jacob made an end of commanding his sons, he gathered up his feet into the bed, and yielded up the ghost, and was gathered unto his people. So, we're on Zebulun. We did talk about the wrath of Judah and Simeon. But I just want to do, not Judah and Simeon, I meant Simeon and Levi. I just want to look at verse 6 real quick. And also I want to mention something. Well, we're going to Asher anyways. Remember yesterday I was looking for a reference in the New Testament of someone from a tribe other than Judah. And it was in Luke. I thought it was in Luke, but I didn't really hunt for it because I thought I could find it with the search. They dropped the H in the King James, so it's Asher. That's what threw me off. See, sometimes that can inhibit your searching because the New Testament spelling is different. Sometimes. Secret is counsel. Okay, come down into their counsel. The counsel of cruel men. It means both counsel and counsel. With an I and with an E. Okay, so there's nothing to add to that. And the assembly is the assembly, that's fine. Just wanted to have a peek at that. Okay, so Zebulun shall dwell at the haven of the sea, and he shall be for an haven of ships, and his borders shall be unto Zidon. Yeah, that is, Zidon is near where we would think of modern Lebanon, or is perhaps. I'm not sure if it's actually in there. The cities of Tyre and Zidon were sort of like sister cities, or one was in the sea, and I believe Tyre was the city in the sea, and then Zidon was the city on land next to Tyre, and so they were sisters like that. Often you have cities, like on one side of the river and then the other, but the one is the more dominant. But anyway, the borders of Zebulun were the coastal regions of the northern reaches of Israel getting up towards Zidon. And in the time of Solomon, there was a close relationship between Hiram, king of Tyre, and Solomon, and they brought down cedars from Lebanon to build the house of Solomon. And so, what else can you say? He says he's going to dwell at the haven of the sea. He shall be for an haven of ships. His borders shall be into Zidon. He shall dwell at the haven of the sea, and he shall be for an haven of ships. That's an interesting thing. What is a haven? I always think of it as a place where a ship can find protection, like from the storm of the sea, right? And perhaps this is also a commentary on his character, and the characteristic of. I don't want to say. I don't think of it as the idea that because it plays into that whole the parents have eaten the sour grape and the children's teeth are set on edge. Just because Reuben looked at his father's nakedness, so to speak, that is the euphemism they would use, because he went up to his father's wife. Even though he did that, that's not like all his children are cursed. No such thing is said. It's not like all the children of Reuben, well, they all have a tendency to near incest. That's not. No, it's not a problem. Generally, though Reuben himself would not excel, it could be true that he has, not that is a sort of a genetic characteristic, but that the father sort of foreshadows the path of the tribe. That could be one way, because it's a very tempting way to look at these things, right? It's almost impossible not to, because it sort of begs for you to do that. Just when it says what will happen in the last days, there are other ways of interpreting that other than the end times. But certainly in the extremities of the experience of these tribes, you see things like that coming up. Now, Reuben, there's not a lot more said of Reuben that we would know, like what that would mean for the tribe. It's like the thing is, if it is a prophecy for the future of those peoples or groups or even regions, depending on which way it's being looked at, you would think it would have to apply across the board. I mean, we wouldn't be able to just, so that, that is somewhat a strike against it. It's fun to explore and to think about, and of course we're going to do that. But it also, I like to add the caution that you can't. These kind of interpretations are going to be, for what they're worth, and they're not worth a whole lot. They're not the kind of thing you're going to put your faith in for salvation, anyways. So, on that account, it's a good example of the kind of thing where, like, if you could have a lot of differences with someone of opinion on what this all means, and it shouldn't be something that is like fellowship ending. It should be, you should be able to disagree strongly, meaning I totally disagree with you. That's a strong disagreement. I don't mean heatedly. There should be no heat involved. There should be no heat involved in a disagreement over something like this. It's a good example. It's getting towards endless genealogies. It's not a genealogy per se, but it's kind of, it's in a genealogy, they often list the sons. Well, here it's all these blessings. And the way a father blesses his sons is of particular interest. So it's worth studying. It's not like we're just going to fly by it. Like if we were Like when we were reading the genealogy, the sons of Edom, and this is Esau and all that stuff, we didn't dwell terribly long on it. But there's definitely nuggets of meaning to be derived. I didn't look up haven like I was going to. Of 13. Haven, Chof, shore, coast. Chof, shore, coast. So the idea that it is a haven in the sense of protection is only implied by the fact that it is the coast. They come to the coast of the seas. The sea coast, seashore, the shore of ships. Now, obviously, when you bring... Here it's literally Genesis 49, it is the shore of ships. That means the shore to which ships come. Okay, so that does imply, that's literally what's being used here. That's the way it's being used here. It's not just the haven, but the haven of the ships. That's exactly the, let's see the words, what it said. Haven of ships, yeah. He shall be the shore of ships. Now, the thing is, not every coastline is created equal. Not every coastline is an appropriate place for ships to come. And they can't because there are rocks or other things that make it dangerous or impossible. Sandbars, all kinds of things. But there are certain kinds of coasts that are very suitable for ships to come to, right? It's a suitable landing place. So I do see some clear path here forward for a metaphorical understanding. That Zebulun, like as his coast is a place that welcomes ships, so himself is a welcomer of new things. A place where strangers come. Being fond of strangers, philonexia, sorry, not no, philonexia, philoxenia. And I think I forgot the wrong word. Well, anyways, there's a Greek word. It means like fond of foreigners, fond of strangers, fond of guests. Given to hospitality is, I think, the way it translates in the King James. And so I think that that's part of what it's saying about Zebulun. There's no, or Zebulun, I don't know why I keep saying Zebulun. Zebulun, he dwells at the place of welcoming and is a place of receiving, ships. And his borders extend. The idea of borders extending to the limits of what God has given us. Because God did not give them the land of Tyre and Zidon. They never took possession of it. It was not given to them. Israel was not called upon to conquer all their neighbors. There were some they were supposed to, they could make them subject, but not just to take them over. So, but having your border extend to the edge of where God gives, that also has meaning in it too. To receive the utmost blessing to the very end, to be at the end and also at the leading edge, at the place where God's kingdom interacts and comes into contact with the world. So that you see the blessing in that clearly. It's very particular. It's like the ships, the place of the ship's landing. That's the one, even Reuben, he says good things about him. But he's not going to excel. Excel means exceed. In many ways, I'd like all my children to be average, meaning among each other. I want them all to be, when one excels the other, you risk a lot of that Joseph situation. I think that's why Jacob sees Judah as the true leader, because Joseph can't lead from his position as the most blessed, as the best. Yeah. Sorry, I was just tamping that. I didn't want to. There was a direction of discussion I didn't want to go. That direction I do want to go. That you can see, like in Judah, that sort of, he treads the ground of being, one, he's a natural son of Leah, but Leah is the less beloved wife. And he's also the fourth son, he's the fourth of Leah's sons. Wait, Simeon, Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, right? That's how it went, yeah. And so, he doesn't occupy a favored position. He's sort of the compromise candidate. Yeah, I mean, like the sons of Leah can accept Judah as one of their own. And also as, they know he's competent. He may be their younger brother, but they understand his competence. They know him. They've worked with him. And also, the fact, he's one of them. He didn't grow up in any way with the expectation of exceeding or being that go-to guy, the firstborn, or like Joseph, that extremely gifted later child, who's also a firstborn of his mother, but nevertheless not really a firstborn in any sense of the way siblings would look at it. And that's why, there is a sort of, you see, Joseph is very blessed, but his blessing is more in the abundance. There's like this abundance that's associated with him and a fruitfulness. And they were the most numerous. Between Ephraim and Manasseh, that was the most numerous of the tribes, especially when they entered the promised land. Joseph was very fruitful. He had many descendants. And the nation of Israel, among them, Ephraim was very blessed. And unfortunately, like a lot of people, the abundance of blessing, even like with Solomon, all the wisdom and all the riches that he had, all that has the potential to corrupt us. Because, our life, we strive for victory. I do, in Christ, right? But also, people in the world, they strive for a kind of victory for themselves. They want to make their way in the world, be successful, get money, obtain some sort of possessions, right? And live the good life. And so and even in Christianity, we think in terms of laying up treasures in heaven. And when we talk about these things, unfortunately, we often think of them in carnal sense, like, my mansion in the heavens, even though we talk about how that's not really what it's all about. Not to say there won't be places to dwell and things to interact with, things that might be considered worth possessing. You know what I mean? But I tend to think of the greatest treasures to be entirely intangible in terms of they are all bound up in my relationship with God, my relationship with Him, and the thing that is forged between us in this life is the most treasured possession I will have in the world to come. And you can see why. I mean, it's absolutely because God is the one. We're going to live in fellowship with God. And that's an actual thing. It's not just like pie in the sky. It's a very, like, you get used to dealing with the world as though God isn't around, as though God isn't watching, as though everything doesn't count. Everything does count. So even with the blood of Jesus, we take it for granted and we do whatever we want. That's not a good idea. We should not take it for granted. Be cautious about taking it for granted, I always say. Okay. I was on a long tangent, but I don't think there's whatever. We'll probably come around to it again if it's important. The Lord has a way of bringing things to my mind that He needs me to talk about. The haven of the sea, the border of desire. Okay. Issachar is a strong ass crouching down between two burdens. I was talking about the sons, and it was Judah and Joseph. Having that, when we see Joseph, and I guess we'll wait till then. We'll talk about it more. Then let's just go on. Okay, cool. We laid plenty of groundwork for that, so that's fine. It's mostly just wanted to make sure I didn't leave anything hanging, but we're cool. We're definitely coming around to that again. So Issachar is as a strong ass couching down between two burdens. I had different thoughts about I don't really binding his fold to the vine. I read it and it seemed so, there was such, I felt like something so going on there, but I couldn't put it into words that I could extend for you. So we'll see. Because we'll still have the rest of the week on it. Maybe something more will be revealed to us. So as a beast of burden between two burdens. He's crouching down. He's got a burden on both sides. He's fully loaded. This is the way I would look at that. Loaded to the max. Also, the idea of bearing two burdens. When you bury, no matter what you're carrying, really, it's just the burden of what you're carrying. There's really only one burden, right? So when you talk about two burdens, it's like, well, what does that look like? Well, it means you're overburdened because you're bearing what could be considered your own burden, like one burden for one man. If you're carrying two burdens, it's like you're carrying the burdens of two. And as a strong person, sometimes you take on more than other people can handle. In whatever field that is. Whatever you're working at. Sometimes like you'll say to somebody, "Well, I'm really good at this, so leave it to me. I'll do this. You go ahead and take care of that. I'll take care of yours because this is just it may work out better because I can handle both." All right, and that's the kind of spirit we see in Issachar. And again, the sons of the handmaids. These are the sons of Leah and Rachel. Rachel's handmaid. I forgot if it was Zilpah or Bilhah because of the similarity of the names. That's all right. Sorry, Zilpah and Bilhah. Sorry. I'm not a people person per se. I forgot which one. And all right. So Zebulun at the haven of the sea, for an haven of ships. Okay, wait. Issachar is that he saw that rest was good and the land that it was pleasant, and bowed his shoulders to bear, and became a servant to tribute. I'm not sure what to make of that. I guess what it says is Issachar likes to work and he likes to play, so to speak. He likes to rest. He likes to work when he's working and rest when he's resting. It's because rest is good. He likes to take time off. And this actually reminds me of a lot of people because, and I've been very tempted to it, because being self-employed for a long time, sometimes it feels like you never stop working. Like there's no clear line of demarcation between my struggle for survival and my, free time. And it's very tempting. I've had jobs where I just had a job. I worked it for certain hours, came home. I tell you what, and I liked it. It was a lot less stressful having that regular paycheck just come, just serving to tribute, man, just serving to pay. That's what it sounds like to me, just becoming a wage slave, so to speak. I don't believe in the idea of wage slave is kind of like, slavery is involuntary servitude, which you may be compensated for, but the main point is it's sort of not voluntary if it's truly slavery, at least the way we think of it, right? Like I've demonstrated in the Bible, there's different kinds of service. Just like we have like the idea of a domestic servant, like a butler. Butler is expected to do what he's told, but obviously he at any time could say, "Sir, I respectfully say, no, sir, I will tender my resignation immediately." A butler can always do that and just go. "No, sir, I'm leaving." But they are also a servant though, because they do what they're told. And their service isn't voluntary by any means, but it's not exactly forced, meaning what I mean by not voluntary is, they don't do things because they want to do them. They do them because they're told to do them. And I guess that's what you do when you have a job. You do what you're told. Any job is like that. So, that kind of service is different. So I wonder if there's any help in the Hebrew here to nudge us towards one way of looking at it or the other. Let's see. Because it almost sounds like what I was describing. It's like, he likes to work and then he likes to have his time off. And not everyone, not every job allows that. You know what I mean? But some types of jobs, where you allow someone to direct you, you just become a cog in the machine. Like I said, at times I found it tempting to go back to that because there's a certain sense, even though it's not, you're no more secure than you are in any other thing. What you're doing is you're outsourcing the anxiety of being in business to your boss. You know what I mean? When you're in business for yourself, there's a certain anxiety not necessarily anxiety, but stress that can cause anxiety. There's a certain amount, it causes me anxiety, I'll tell you that. There's a certain amount of stress involved in running your own business. And when you have a job, all that stress of running the business and making sure all that and getting the checks out and all that and making pay, all that stuff the boss cares about. That's his stuff. You don't got to care about that. You just come, do your job, take your check, go home. And then guess what? The rest of the time is all yours. You don't have to think about work at all. I mean, I remember, I've enjoyed those kind of jobs, and it's very tempting to me sometimes to take one. Not that anyone wants me per se. I don't have the skill set for a lot of those kinds of occupations. The kinds of occupations I get involved in all involve me never getting any time off. So it doesn't really, so what? So that's life, I get it. I sympathize with our friend Ishakar. I'm also a strong ass. I don't mind crouching down between two burdens. I don't mind carrying things for other people. But I also, I like to be done. And I didn't choose a life that went that way, or it wasn't chosen, the Lord didn't direct me in the way of a life that would allow for much of that. It's probably for the best. Though at different times in my life, I've had a lot more time for rest. Because like I said, it's not like I didn't have jobs before where I'd come home and be done with work. But also as a homeowner, there's a lot of work to be done, especially if you have any thought of, I'd call myself a light prepper, meaning I'm definitely not prepared for the apocalypse. Okay. Meaning any eventuality where it's like, okay, you gotta, I'm definitely not ready for anything apocalyptic, like a meteor or even a really bad solar flare. I think we'll see about that. But I'm not ready, okay? But I do think about getting ready, and I work towards being somewhat ready. I'm ready for something. I'm at least ready for a power outage, or something like that. Or I could go like 2 weeks without power. That kind of thing. I'm prepped for that. But that, there's not many apocalyptic scenarios that last 2 weeks, guys. They all go much longer than that, so we'll see. Anyways, but like I said, I do believe in getting ready. So I'm busy about stuff like that. I'm always gardening and learning about gardens. I used to post pictures of it. I haven't done it in a while. Maybe I'll post pictures this year of the garden on Facebook. I got buildings to, livestock, considerate chickens, to think about ways to make a flock and that replenishes itself and that feeds us and stuff like projects, right? And, so what? Rest is good. You got to take some rest, right? The Lord even ordered it in his 10 commandments. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. And some people think to this day, one of the biggest problems in the church is people not keeping the Sabbath properly. But right there, you made a mistake when you said properly. Because again, you're starting to judge another man's servant. I keep the Sabbath. I have the rest of God through Christ. I have the peace of God, which passes all understanding, that gives me rest in the midst of all my labors. No matter what day that occurs on. The idea that the New Testament makes it very clear that no man can judge me about the Sabbath days or a holy day. I'm not going to let you judge me on that basis. It's not your right how I worship the Lord. I honor every day alike. Today is much a Sabbath as tomorrow, and is as much an opportunity to rest in Jesus and to physically rest as any other day. And I try to make it up that way because I just don't live in a world I'll just put it quite frankly, it is where it is convenient to do it according to tradition. But thankfully, through the Lord Jesus, I don't have to worry about tradition, because that is not one of the aspects of our faith that is essential to salvation. The Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. And often outwardly celebrating and observing things is good, but it also has the potential to puff us up and make us think we're more than we are, just because we do some external form of righteousness, which we can then look at others and judge them because they don't do. They don't wear tassels in their garments like we do. They don't wear big phylacteries in their heads the way we do. Oh, we don't do phylacteries. Oh, but you do other things. There's all kinds of ways people try to signal how virtuous they are and how sinful others are. And it gets people something to be excited about. Oh, those people in those other churches, they don't do it right. They don't do it right like we do. We should feel good about, we feel good. We are the true servants of God. But them, they don't have it right like us. Still haven't looked at what tribute means. So verse 15. Still haven't looked at that. Let's get it. Hold on here a second. 15. Servant to tribute. There we are. Servant, abad. Again, to work or serve. Not the same word, I think, as slave. In fact, it's Genesis 2. A man to till the ground. To cultivate the ground is the word work here. Okay. A primitive root, not a prime. That doesn't mean prime. It means primitive. There's a period. It's an abbreviation. It's one of the ways in which it made me feel that Arnold Murray was not a particularly good scholar, because he didn't even know that. It's like, obviously he learned his Hebrew by misreading Strong's Concordance, folks. Okay, sorry to say that, and sorry to those for whom that's off-topic gobbledygook that they don't understand. All right, so see, it's a word that's used quite frequently in the 289 occurrences on the right-hand side there. So, yeah, this is also used of the elder shall serve the younger. So again, it's serve in the sense of work. And look at the way it's translated. It's also translated make slaves. Right there. So it's used in a wide variety of applications. Become slaves, being slaves, bondage, burdened, cultivate. Okay, you know what I mean? Like, I can see between, burden, enslave, and serve, but cultivate is pretty open. That's like just work. So it's interesting. The word in Hebrew used for enslave also means to work. So it's going to depend on the context in which it's used. Now, tribute is going to be maybe a little more helpful. Let's get back over to there. Oh, there we go. Sorry, I'm a little slow down on this computer there. Too many browser windows open, probably. Okay. Tribute is... what I saw was already really interesting. Body of forced laborers. Forced service. Task workers. Task work. It's of uncertain derivation. So this here sort of puts us in... It's interesting, though. I look at the right-hand side here. It's like in New American Standard in Deuteronomy, it says, it shall become your forced labor and shall serve. And then King James went with tributaries. But looks like most... the King James liked the word tribute a lot, whereas the New American Standard and the INT, whatever these are, they like forced almost every time. Subject to forced labor, forced tribute, forced this, forced that. King James likes tributaries. They like a more euphemistic word, apparently. every other time these other translations are going with forced labor. So that puts this into proper context. It is not just work for hire. It's work so you became a servant, like a slave. So what does that mean? Well, I guess that's that you can be a hard worker. You know what I mean? And somehow become a slave. You know what I mean? I think sometimes because you're willing to work and put up with things. You know what I mean? Like bearing two burdens, like carrying more than your weight. People will take advantage of that. Instead of like saying like, wow, what a hard worker, let's reward him. They think, wow, what a hard worker, let's take advantage of this. This is great. I don't even have to pay him any more than anybody else. In fact, and that's the thing. That's the danger. It's the danger of going the extra mile. You go the extra mile, pretty soon you're not able to go. It's always been a danger. Just like turn the other cheek. There's always a chance that in turning the other cheek, it goes really badly for you. At least in the sense of the temporal. In the sense, be made into a servant. I guess it's the danger of ease. Ease can lead us, when you're comfortable with just work, but because there's, it's weird to talk about work as ease, but there is an ease of work when you're strong. And like I said, and the work isn't that demanding. I said, I did jobs that weren't that demanding. I was there. The pay was decent, so I enjoyed doing it. And it certainly was not stressful. Not when I got off work, Out of a desire to rest. You allow others to be your boss and to take over the bigger responsibilities. And down the line, you can find yourself enslaved. And that's the way, sometimes the world even looks like that's the way it's going now. That's the way, at least that's what some of the rich people are preaching, right? You'll own nothing and be happy. Doesn't that sound like a slave? You'll own nothing, but you'll be happy because you can rest. In a pleasant land, and you won't have anything to worry about. You have all your needs taken care of. Just go to work, go home, play your video games, go to bed, and come back to work in the morning. Eat, drink, for tomorrow we die, and then, that's it. Life can be, you can settle into a routine life. And not realize, life can become so mundane that we don't realize what's happening to us. What we're becoming. Because I got to think that's got to be, there's positive and negative here. There's danger and opportunity. Like Dan shall judge his people as one of the tribes of Israel. Dan shall be a serpent by the way, an adder in the path. Now, Dan is one of the tribes that's not mentioned in the book of Revelation. It has Levi and Joseph instead of Dan, but it includes Manasseh and Joseph. Joseph is, you remember, for Joseph it's supposed to be Ephraim and Manasseh, but in Revelation they left Ephraim's name out of it, and instead we have Joseph, the tribe of Joseph, which would be Ephraim. But Dan is not included in the seal. So I don't know what that means. Because it's interesting, because why would Dan be as one of the tribes of Israel? Is he not one of the tribes? Well, with all the half brothers and stuff, I suppose perhaps it's like there's some doubt. Zebulun, Issachar. I already forgot exactly who's mother of what, because I know that Leah has a few more kids. I thought Gad, was it the four of them? Dan, Gad, Asher, and Naphtali? Or is it just Asher and Naphtali? I don't want to go back and find out, but I guess I'm doing it. Right. The sons of Bilhah. I was right there. There we go. Zebulon. So Issachar, Zebulon. Okay, Issachar and Zebulon were the children of Leah. Oh, I get it. Okay. He starts off with all the sons of Leah. And then gets on to the children of Zilpah, which would be Gad and Asher. And then we have Rachel, and then Bilhah, which is Dan and Naphtali. Okay. So Issachar and Zebulun were also the children of Leah. Okay. That's why I threw me off. So he starts off with the 6 sons of Leah. And then we get the 2 sons of the one handmaid. I remember in the old days I would want to keep them all straight, but now I'm just like, I don't care. I'm like, I could have kept it in my mind, but I'm like, Okay, this is okay. So Dan, great poem. Wait, you know what? Now I do want to know. Wait, Dan. Okay, Gad, Asher, or whatever. Reuben, Er, Onan, Shelah, Issachar, Zebulun. So Dan, Asher is Bilhah, or Zilpah, sorry. Oh, because he gives them out of order. Gad and Asher are the sons of Zilpah. And then Rachel's children are given. And then Dan and Naphtali are Bilhah. So Dan and Naphtali are Rachel's servants' children. Or her handmaids. The children that Jacob bare by her handmaid, Bilhah. Okay. So Zebulun, okay, then, so we start off with all the children of Leah. Then we go to the children of Rachel's handmaid, Dan and Naphtali. No, but we don't go to Naphtali, we just go to Dan. So Dan is one of Rachel's handmaid's children. Okay. Anyways, Dan shall be a serpent by the way, an adder in the path that biteth the horse heels, so that the rider shall fall backward. You know, that's not necessarily, that's not a good thing unless the rider is your enemy. You know. So, you know, the problem with serpents is their nature. You know, they bite. And, you know, they're not like, they don't have human compassion or familiarity. You know, it's not considered an animal you can put a lot of trust in. I'm just saying symbolically. You know, I know people own snakes. They're like, oh, they're fine. Even my buddy who's owned a snake for years, you know, one time got a little sketchy and the snake lunges at him. You know, it's because it will. They behave on instinct. Sometimes they got to bite. There's no real malice in it. It's just what they do. And so Dan, you know, is one of the tribes considered, at least it's what I learned. And so this is a little, you know, pardon me if it's a little sketchy, but I learned it as Dan was part of I know that one of the golden calves was set up in Dan. And therefore Dan became associated with the going astray of Israel and of the idolatry. And because the calf was set up in Dan, it became of special interest to them because it was, you know, because this drew people in. You know, and this is how it is with religion very often. Someone's trying to call me, but I can't take the call. Anyways, all right. So Dan shall judge his people as one of the tribes of Israel, shall be a serpent by the way, adder in the path. The symbology of an adder on the path and all these things. Get another call. Yep. All right. So, the symbology of that, it's like a trap or a hazard, like the symbolism of the pit that was digged, that a man falls into, it's like a serpent by the way is a treacherous situation where you have to tread carefully. You have to be careful because this guy can bite you, and so that's how the man Dan was regarded. And also, again, I still regard this as being somewhat indicative of at least the history of the tribe, maybe not the character of the people, but just the father sort of presaged what would come. And not that it's, not that it's the destiny of their DNA so much as it just happens to be. There was things about the fathers that reflected on their descendants, as far as at least in the history of them as a group. I've waited for thyself. I wonder why he injects it right there. To me, it feels like, Dan being a serpent, by the way, Jesus said, have I chosen you 12, and one of you is a devil. Comparing Dan to a serpent is like comparing him to the devil. You know what I mean? Like, again, there's like a devil in the midst of the tribes. And like I said, Dan is excluded, so there's, from the book of Revelation's reckoning of the tribes, and that's something to be thought of. But Jacob promises and blesses him, saying he shall judge his people as one of the tribes. Even if in the end times they don't have a place in God, in the ultimate sense that he still does. That's what I would say. Is like, yes, in Revelation, Dan is not included. But that does not mean that Dan is entirely excluded, but at least his name was banished there for whatever reason. Just like Ephraim, the idolatry, the reason that we think of it as idolatry being associated with Dan's shame, because Ephraim also had the golden calf that Jeroboam set up when they separated from the kingdom of Judah and Rehoboam, the son of Solomon. So, I've waited for thy salvation, O Lord. I'm contemplating the serpent nature of Dan, and also how that this can mean bad things, in the future. Dan's a serpent, by the way. It's not good. I've waited for your salvation, Lord. I trust the Lord, even in the midst of one of my own sons being a potential danger along the way, I suppose, to the rest of us, the rest of them. Because, when the rider falls backward off the horse, that's usually like not a good thing. You want to slide sideways off a horse, if you got to fall, you want to go straight back. That's not good. Gad, a troop shall overcome him, but he shall overcome at the last. Out of Asher his bread shall be fat, and he shall yield royal dainties. Naphtali is a hind let loose, he giveth goodly words. So we have three brothers there very quickly, one after the other. Gad, which means a troop shall overcome him. So his name is associated with a troop, because I've had a troop of kids, but he shall overcome at last. So, I get that's a good, that's a comeback kid kind of blessing. A troop shall overcome him, but he shall overcome at the last. Hey, sometimes that's the way life goes. I'm just one man. What am I against the forces of darkness in this world? Not much, But how should one chase 1,000 and two put 10,000 to flight? except the Lord had sold them. Sometimes we are the ones who are put to flight because we have not been reconciled with the Lord. We haven't entered into our relationship with Him to where He wants to do that on our behalf, or choose to do that for some, like if He has something for us to do. Because why would God do something like that for me? Why would He help me overcome multitudes of enemies? Why? Why should that happen? If I have enemies, maybe I should be overcome. Why should God intervene that I should overcome? And at the last is, I'll take the last victory over the first victory. Give me the final victory. And that's a blessing I would take anytime. Right? Yeah, we have been overcome at times, right? Be not overcome with evil, but overcome evil with good. There are times we overcome. There are times when we lose. But we know that all things work together for good for those that love God, for those who are the called according to His purpose. And so no matter what the setback, no matter what overcomes us, we know that we shall overcome at the last. And that's the lesson we can take from Gad. That's a good blessing. I mean, even though it is hard, it's another, a lot of these are hard. It's like, hey, for some people, I would rather just be overcome all obstacles. Right? Out of Asher his bread shall be fat, and he shall yield royal dainties. Now, the woman of Asher is in Acts chapter 2. That's what I was talking about yesterday. There was one Anna, a prophetess, the daughter of Phanuel, of the tribe of Asher, or Aser here. It's spelled without an H. She was of great age. The word I used to find it was tribes, of course. It was just a tribe, or tribe, not tribes. And had lived with her husband 70 years from her virginity. And she was a widow of about 84 years. 7 years. She had a husband for 7 years, so she'd been a widow for a long time. She got married, was married for 7 years, and then she stayed a widow from that point on for 84 years. She departed not from the temple, but served God with fastings and prayers night and day. Right? But again, of the tribe of Asher. The other tribes were present. The remnant shall return to Jacob. The remnant of Jacob shall return to the mighty God, as Isaiah and Micah talked about the Assyrian captivity and saying there would be a remnant. Now, there is also a portion that was lost. I remember this one guy was trying to say, he talked about the remnant returning, which I wholeheartedly agree, but then denying that there was any lost tribes. Well, they were lost in the sense of they were killed and brought into captivity, and they were left few in number among the heathen where they were scattered. And I said, the theory is people who say, oh no, Israel wasn't scattered among the heathen, they were grouped together, and then as a whole they kind of took over the heathen. That's a fairy tale. We from the north we were the barbarians of the north. We were not, that's not where the tribes of Israel, we didn't become them. They didn't become us. I don't buy that. They were left few in number among the heathen where they were scattered. Even from thence. But the point is, if from thence they would call upon the Lord, He would bring them back to be joined to their brethren. If they weren't brought back to be joined, you can consider them gone forever. And only through Christ could their descendants somehow, who are, like I said, they've got, I can't remember her name. I was going to mention the name of the politician. They've got her level of, Israelite blood as to her Indian blood, right? You can see her face. I don't remember the name. It's probably worth forgetting and worth never mentioning. Pocahontas. Out of Asher his bread shall be fat, and he shall yield royal dainties. So that's someone who, they produce things. His bread, that which by which he provides others. So it's someone who's prosperous. Prosperity. Again, you can think either in the spiritual realm. We want to prosper in the spirit. I want to prosper in this world too. I want to prosper, and that's all right. One of the things I was saying before, we get so used to seeing worldly prosperity as victory that when we don't have it, we start to think we're lost or somehow God isn't blessing us. But that's not the case. You know what I mean? We get so used to thinking of those things, those temporal blessings, as the blessing. Because we need those things. Those things are needful. Yet, and as good and as satisfying as it can be to have those blessings and to take your rest and all those things, there's even greater satisfaction in the things of God. So when we talk about, Jesus said, "My flesh is bread, my blood is wine." You know what I mean? So when we talk about the bread bringing forth, it is, well, what are you eating? What are you sustaining yourself with? It's not that all bread is Jesus. No. Bread is just a symbol of the food that sustains us. Right? So what is sustaining us? What is our bread? And that depends. Again, I think the idea of yielding royal dainties, it's interesting because Asher is associated with that Anna the prophetess in the book of Luke, who was there and who was blessed to see the coming Messiah. That was one of the things. Before she would die, she would see him come. She was over 100 years old at that time. Royal dainties. What does dainties mean there? Something delicate, I assume. That's what dainty means. I'm assuming it means like pastry. Food. It means a dainty food or delight. Madonna, a dainty food or delight. That's what it says. Delicacies. Not used a whole lot. Sorry, excuse me. Not used a whole lot. But there we go. Royal. And what about royal? Is that also there? Royal king. Yeah, Melech. So yield dainties worthy of the king, to the king. Again, service to the, I look at it as messianic service as far as that. If I think about that blessing, that's what the ultimate version of that would be. To be blessed, to bring forth fatness, to feed others with the flesh of Christ. As far as if I'm going to be blessed that way, that's what it is to me. And so there's temporal ways, and this is going to be good for Asher and for his tribe. Because like I said, I do think there is a shadow that the Father casts, so to speak, over the tribe, that the prophecy still has something to do with them. Naphtali is a hind let loose and giveth godly words. He giveth goodly words, sorry. Well, goodly words, hopefully they're godly, right? A hind let loose. Well, that's a creature wild. You ever seen a deer? A loose deer? Well, they are jumpy. I mean, they go off. Ba-doom, ba-doom. They bound away. I mean, when you free... Because, again, it's not a goat let loose or a sheep let loose, domestic animals. It's a hind, a deer. He is a deer, a wild animal set free. And what is that? Well, the only thing you can predict about a wild animal set free is it's kind of unpredictable. They just bolt off. You couldn't exactly say where. I mean, I suppose maybe not. Maybe a wildlife expert would be able to predict the action. He's going to go right to that copse of bushes. You watch him. I guess. I don't know. I should be more attuned with wildlife, then I could comment a little better on that. Because there's something about a let loose deer that is indicative of Naphtali's nature. You know what I mean? Whether that be, he's a panicking, you know what I mean? Because deer are fearful creatures. They're prey animals. They are nervous. They have anxiety. I don't know. So I don't know what, if that is indicative of his free-spiritedness. Like that, he's a free spirit, like a hind let loose. It says let loose. The idea is like a freed animal. And what does he do with his freedom? Well, he gives goodly words. I do think, that is, I don't know exactly what to make of all these blessings, but I mean, as I get through this part, I'm like, this sounds like, an endorsement of what freedom does. I believe in free speech. It's important because the only way you get to good words is when you're free to say all the words. Because there's going to be some people who don't like the truth, who don't want the truth spoken, who don't want goodly things spoken. Speak not unto us right things, but prophesy unto us smooth things. Prophesy deceits. People don't want good words. They want things that are easy to be heard. Things that make them feel good when they hear them, right? That's not what a goodly word. Good words are words that do good. Words that actually have profit. And in order to get to profitable things, I do think it requires freedom. Because where people are afraid to speak, where they're afraid to tell the truth, because that's what happens is that at some point, no human being is immune to error. And then someone's got to speak truth to power, and it's going to be something the powerful don't want to hear. And in order to be able to do that, you have to be like a freed animal. You can't be all chained up. Because then you better not speak amiss or you're going to the dinner table. You can't give good words. Freedom and good words go together. Because you can't find them out without freedom. When all you're allowed to do is go along the guardrails of where the powerful say you're allowed to go, you can't find the truth in that. Because there's going to be truth. There'll be some truth, of course, but there's going to be a lot of truth that's at odds with what they want, with their interests, and you're not going to be allowed to explore that. Freedom, to have the truth, you have to be free. And that's why when I study freely. I'm not bound by fundamentalist interpretations. I have freedom in Christ because of my true faith. I get to explore all those ideas because I know he's real. My salvation is not in jeopardy. You don't have to listen to me. You know what I mean? And I'm not here to raise doubts for anyone's salvation. I'm here to make you secure in those things which count for the most, to the things which bless you the most. Wow, I'm over an hour now. Okay, I thought I was trying to make it to an hour, but we've got it done. So we'll begin at verse 22 next time with Joseph. We want to spend some time on Joseph before we're done here, and we will. So we'll cover that next time, Lord willing, tomorrow, right? Until then, thanks for joining me, and look forward to being back again tomorrow.
Nevertheless, the dimness shall not be such as was in her vexation, when at the first he lightly afflicted the land of Zebulun and the land of Naphtali, and afterward did more grievously afflict her by the way of the sea beyond Jordan, in Galilee of the nations.